Okay, am I good?
Good to go. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So welcome everybody to this is the Bowen Island Municipality Housing Advisory Committee meeting, November 1st, 2024. I'll call the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. Sarah, do we have any late items?
We do not.
Okay, great. So somebody move the agenda or, yeah, thank you, Nigel. Second. Anybody? Thank you, Lois. And is there any comments or questions, changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll carry that unanimously. No objections. Perfect. Adoption of the minutes. I did see that, Councillor Morris. Thank you for sending out that email. There was a small change to the minutes. So the ones in the agenda package are incorrect, and there was a newer version with just the slight change on the recording the vote on the last meeting. So can I have a move to accept the amended, updated minutes as circulated by Councillor Morris earlier? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Morris, second by Lois. All in favor, I'll assume, unless hearing different. Yep, unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Public comments. Sarah, is there any members of the public here today?
No. Oh, I am just going to let Ron. Ron has just arrived.
Oh, perfect.
Him in.
Okay, I was trying to think which face was missing, and I know we got regrets from Greg, so he won't be here. But great, nice to see Ron made it. Okay, great. So yeah, no members of the public by the sounds of it. Okay, so next I will hand it over to Drew, I think, as we've got for the referral for 1360 Mount Gardner Road.
For sure, and I'll share my screen. Sorry, it's just doing something slightly different than when I usually share screen. Hopefully it's gonna. Okay, you guys. Are you guys looking at my at the PowerPoint?
Yes. We're seeing a bow map on a web browser, not a PowerPoint. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is it good now?
Yes, now we're seeing
okay. Okay, yeah, it opened up differently this time. Anyways. Okay, so thank you to the Housing Advisory Committee. So this report is to introduce a rezoning application for 1360 Mount Gardner Road. So this was introduced to council at the regular meeting on October 15th and was then referred to this committee as well as Advisory Planning Commission and the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee for recommendations. And so this is a rezoning and OCP amendment application to rezone 1360 Mount Gardner Road from rural residential 3 to settlement residential 1C. And from an official community plan designation of rural residential, which is RS, to a new designation allowing a potential subdivision to be determined. So this OCP designation hasn't yet been determined since no applicable OCP designation exists for this lot size, so a new designation will have to be drafted. The site is just over 3 acres or 1.25 hectares in size, and currently has a single-family dwelling with multiple accessory buildings. The property is not serviced by community water or sewer. The proposed rezoning would allow a subdivision of the property into 2 lots. The existing residence would become the principal residence of the west lot, and a new single-family dwelling is intended for the east lot. The applicant, Rosie Montgomery, has explained that she has resided on Bowen Island for 50 years, most recently with the mortgage of the property having come to term and the bank having considerably increased the rates. The costs of remaining on the property have become prohibitively expensive. The applicant intends to sell the newly formed property to acquire funds necessary to allow her to continue living in the house her late husband built for her and her children. And under the land use bylaw, the current RR3 zoning permits unserviced lots with a minimum average lot area of 2 hectares and a minimum lot area of 1 hectare. The proposed subdivision would split the lots into 0.57 hectare portions. So therefore, the proposed zoning designation is SR1C, so it's which is an existing zone variation of the SR1 zone, and it permits a minimum and average lot area of 0.4 hectares for unserviced lots. Under the official community plan, the current RS designation allows unserviced lots with a minimum average parcel size of 1 hectare. So considering the proposed lot sizes of 0.7 hectares, that property will need to be converted to a new OCP designation. And as mentioned, yeah, no current OCP designations exist for this lot size, so a new one has to be drafted. And regarding surrounding properties, they are also within the RR3 zoning. And it's best if we go back to the zoning page. Yeah, surrounding properties are also within the R3 zoning and also within the RS OCP designation. There are around a dozen properties noteworthy. You can see that note towards the bottom of the screen there. So about a dozen properties south of Bolton Roads. So they're also within this zone variation SR1C that allows lot sizes as small as 0.4 hectares. So that's just pointing that out because that's the same zone variation that the applicant wishes to rezone to. So regarding amenity contributions, two policies are typically discussed during rezoning. So there'd be the conservation development policy and the affordable housing policy. So neither are overly applicable here. The conservation development policy asks for a designation of at least 50% of the land to be protected from further development. So, that would defeat the purpose here, where the intent is to carry out new development on the unoccupied half of the property. I should note that the applicants discussed that there's about a quarter acre or a third of an acre portion at the far west end of the lot that they were discussing as a contribution to be preserved. And then as for the affordable housing policies, that encourages a range of housing types with an affordability component included. So at this time, there are no plans for the future new residents on the east lot. So its design, as well as the inclusion of a secondary suite, would be the decision of the new owner. So anyways, thank you. That's all the details to share, and I'll turn this over to the board for discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you, Drew. Is there any comments from the committee? What are people's thoughts? Yeah, Nigel, go ahead.
So I reviewed this application in the agenda, and my high level thought on it is it's really important to support housing security, in particular for seniors. I feel like the municipality has a role here in the cost of housing. In particular, what comes to mind is property taxes being scheduled to go up by 10% a year for the next 5 years. So when I look at seniors who are trying to hold on to their home, I think it's really important to support this application. The only qualifier I would put on it is, I guess the affordable housing component. We're working towards what I would like to see is sort of like a uniform policy on cash in lieu contributions, and that's sort of an active discussion. And if something like that were to materialize between now and when this rezoning went through, I would just want the applicant to understand that when there's a rezoning that results in a windfall for the property owner, that we would love to see that the community benefits in some way, even if there isn't room for affordable housing on that particular property. But more importantly, I want to say, I think when we're looking at housing security for seniors, I would not want to delay this application in any way for what is sort of maybe in the pipeline and may happen sooner or later, and we don't know yet. So in general, I'm quite supportive of this.
Great, thanks, Nigel. Anybody else? I guess Lois, Ron, any comments or thoughts? I'm assuming Tim and Allison, you've already had this introduced, so you've probably had your questions answered. And yeah, Ron, go ahead.
Yes, I'm unclear as to would this rezoning contradict any policies that we have?
Wouldn't say it would contradict. I mean, it wouldn't be in line with the current OCP designation, which is why we're proposing it would have to be an OCP amendment as well. But provided that both those bylaws are amended, then no contradictions.
Mm-hmm. Well, then there would seem to be no objection to it, although just as a matter of principle, and this is kind of an academic point, I think I have to disagree with Nigel that of course housing security for seniors is important, but I don't think we want to say that we would treat we would treat an application differently depending upon the age of the owner of that property. I don't think that's quite right. That's all.
I agree with your point.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Lois, did you have any thoughts? No? Okay. I guess one of my questions, and maybe either for Drew directly or maybe just a discussion point for the committee, I'm looking at BOMAP and kind of looking at the larger surrounding, area. So, because of note in your presentation is that, immediately below this area is the SR1C, which is what this person is asking to be changed to. And so I'm just curious if there's any Drew, if you think, is there any aspect of that area that is designated RR3? I mean, other than maybe the lot sizes, although the SR1C below also look to be kind of larger ones. Yeah, do you have any comment as to why is one SR1C and then, their immediate neighbor is the RR3? And is there any reason maybe behind why that lower one was either changed or designated that one in the past? And does it have particular features as to why?
Fair enough. So as I can understand, the RR3 designation was kind of slapped over top all these lots. Like some of them are certainly smaller than what we would allow for a new subdivided lot under RR3. So I think that explains some of the varying lot sizes, like right around the subject lot that we're looking at. So yeah, they would have kind of at the point when Bowen began as a municipality, yeah, they would have been assigned that zoning, and then those ones to the south of Bolton Road were rezoned to this same zoning designation. I know that they were done in 2005. I'll note that they're slightly different in this process in that it was just a rezoning, not a rezoning and OCP amendment, and that was only because it was under a different OCP at the time that allowed some smaller lot sizes. So yeah, at the time, yeah, it was just a rezoning, not an OCP amendment required as well. Yeah, I'm still digging back into kind of decades old records of the reasoning there, but
yeah. Because I guess my thinking is, I think probably similar to what Nigel was saying and Ron. It's sort of, unless there's some really good reason as to why the properties just to the south are really different and doing it, I don't see why we wouldn't let this property have that zoning. It doesn't seem to make it seems reasonable request. And I'm just going to echo kind of what Nigel's comments were, is I would definitely hope, I wouldn't expect the affordable housing policy to be applied in a way of asking them to produce affordable housing. I don't think that's reasonable. And this was covered, I think, earlier this year or last year when we talked about a different rezoning on the south end of the island. And so I think, as Nigel sort of been suggesting there, a sort of cash in lieu of some kind would, I think, what I would be probably hoping to see. Because again, this, they have a single lot, it's worth a certain amount. And if they get this approval, they're going to have two lots of quite significant value, likely higher than, the single lot that they have now. So it would be nice, as Nigel always calls it windfall, they're going to, get that benefit of a rezoning, and it would be nice if at least part of that is shared with the community. And affordable housing is great. I don't think we have a mechanism at the moment for infrastructure, so I'll leave that to another committee or to comment. But yeah, that would kind of be my my feedback at this stage. Yeah, so I guess, Drew, question back to you: is that do you have the feedback you want? Do you need a recommendation from us? What would you like to leave this meeting with from us?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's all meaningful feedback, and I can comment on that generally in terms of going back to council. But yeah, they did ask for a recommendation.
Okay.
That was the motion from council, was to get a recommendation. Yeah.
Okay, great. So Sarah, you've got something drafted?
Yeah, I'll just share. We'll just
Yeah.
list all of them.
Okay. I'm seeing, and it's also in the agenda for anybody else who's looking. So there's a draft recommendation.
Would you mind unsharing?
Oh, I think. Oh yeah, Drew's still sharing.
Oh, sorry. You want me to stop?
Yeah, thanks.
Where's my mouse here?
Okay, did that work?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so the recommendation that the Housing Advisory Committee provide the following comments regarding, that's the parking standard one.
Oops, wrong one. There we go.
Okay. There you go. The Housing Advisory Committee support, I think it's fair to say we support the application for rezoning and OCP amendment to 1360 Mount Gardner Road. And I would say comment with the following, I'm going to say comments. I'm not necessarily going to say conditions. I don't think we're kind of at that stage, but comments. And I think one was definitely the affordable housing policy and how that might be applied and reflect the uplift value in the subdivided property, something along those lines.
The application of the affordable
housing policy, and what did I just say? Application for policy and in relation to the value of the uplift value, in relation to the value uplift value of the newly subdivided properties, something along those lines. Does that, feel free to jump in, anybody, and help with the wordsmithing here. And then anything else? Was there any other comments?
Should that read the uplifted values?
Uplift of, yes, the uplift of either uplifted value or uplift of value, whichever, uplifted value of the, of the newly subdivided properties.
Would it make, I'm still having a hard time following the, would it make more sense to say the application of the affordable housing policy be reflected in relation to?
Sure. Yeah, it's hard because I mean, at this point, we're just saying as a comment, you know, we are anticipating, should this proceed, there would be, you know, the affordable housing policy would be applied, and there would be, maybe we put it a different way, that so maybe Sarah, if you do another point and we can see if one's better than the other worded, maybe it's something more along the lines of, you know, when the affordable housing policy is applied to this rezoning application, we would recommend a cash in lieu calculation instead of whatever, I don't know, Tim, if you can, what are the words, instead of like delivering actual housing kind of thing, if that's a way to word it. Yeah, we would recommend cash in lieu instead of the delivery of affordable housing units. That probably is a better capture of what we're recommending. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it cash in lieu or a contribution to the housing reserve fund? I guess I can't remember what the policy says.
Yeah. Why don't we put cash in lieu / contribution to the housing reserve fund? It might be the same thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might mean the same thing. Okay. Delivery of affordable housing units. Yeah, so I think maybe let's scrap the first sentence. I think this next one kind of captures
The first bullet's gone. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, and maybe the other just comment is, if everybody else kind of agrees, is, you know, its immediate neighbors, you know, to the south have the same zoning designation, and, you know, to our knowledge, you know, there's no significant difference, so it seems a reasonable request kind of thing. Sorry, that's a bit wordy, but.
Are they the immediate neighbors or just neighbors?
Well, sorry, maybe immediate's the wrong term, but you know, whatever. I think the
Properties to the south.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, properties to the south. I think it's 600 feet away. So, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far it is, but yeah.
Yeah. Properties to the south, same zoning designation being requested. Maybe that's a good word to put in there, Sarah, in that first part, same designation being requested.
Same requested zoning designation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just end the sentence there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So requested, and maybe we just, properties to the south of the same zoning designation being requested, comma, and this seems a reasonable request. You know,
Yeah.
in line with the zoning, like, yeah, this is a reasonable request. Maybe we just leave it there. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that, anybody else in the committee, did I miss anything? Or, I mean, I know they've kind of talked about the green park and like they might, but that's kind of, let's let the other committees comment on that. And I know it'll be on its own wastewater, its own water well or whatever. So it's not sort of impacting anything in that way. So yeah. Okay. If we hear no other comments, I'll move the recommendation. Nigel seconded there.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, that looks to be unanimous. Excellent. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Now moving on to the next one, 4.2 parking standards for affordable housing. Oh, thank you, Drew. Sorry, I forgot to say thank you for presenting, answering questions. 4.2, we'll hand it over to Daniel. Parking standards for affordable housing multifamily developments.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Robin. So I have another referral from council on another project that we're working on in the department. This one came from our Housing Accelerator Fund action plan, where one of our action items is to review existing parking standards in the land use bylaw with a view to reducing parking requirements for affordable housing multifamily developments. So you have the council report in the agenda that went to council on Monday. But so some of the things we looked at what are the existing parking standards on Bowen. So you have here an overview of what we require for parking, and generally in rural zones, we require 2 per dwelling unit, and in settlement zones, which are sort of the denser development, we require 1 parking space per dwelling unit. There are some areas, so well, there's one area. Area 1 of CD19 requires half a space per dwelling unit. It's our lowest parking standard. And there's some other things for supportive housing and yeah. And then another thing to look at, over the years, we've issued a number of variances for parking, primarily around Snug Cove. And so 3 that are strictly or largely residential. So area 1 of lot 2 saw a reduction from 18 required to 8. The Birch project now Lookout project on Miller Road behind the health center had a reduction in their parking from 24 required to 10. And the Snug Cove house saw a reduction of 1 parking space in their development. So what staff proposed and brought forward is that we would have a definition in our land use bylaw for affordable housing that would mirror our definition in our official community plan and the affordable housing policy, which is essentially just that affordable housing means it's non-market dwelling units that are governed by housing covenants registered on title in favor of the Bowen Island municipality. So it doesn't get into defining, what the rent is or how the ownership works, but it's saying that there's a housing agreement in place that the municipality has agreed to. And then it would set the parking standard for those units at 0.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit. So essentially trying to set a new standard for the affordable housing units, and then obviously developments would still have the option to come to council to seek a variance for whatever reason, but this would provide an avenue for it to be lower. The other thing to note for this would apply just to the affordable housing units. So some of those developments that you saw, so like the Birch Lookout proposal, I think all the units would be counted as affordable housing, whereas the area 1 of lot 2 at 510 Bowen Island Trunk Road, only a small subset of the units are governed by the housing agreement, so would have been covered as the affordable housing units. Just where we are, so this was an action item in our Housing Accelerator Fund. It had timelines in the action item, so one of them was achieving first reading, which we got on Monday, and then we have timelines to try to adopt a bylaw. And currently the bylaw has been referred to the Islands Trust and to committee. So that's where we are. We would come back for 2nd and 3rd reading and to adopt the bylaw. So maybe I'll stop there and I'll open it up for any questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, Nigel, go ahead.
Just so I'm clear, is the parking standard that we're talking about, is it a minimum standard and a developer could create more parking, or it's a cap and they may not create more than that?
Oh, that's a great question. It is a parking minimum. So it's like you would have to require that many. You have to provide that many, but people are free to provide more.
Okay. Without having to do an extra application.
Correct. Yeah. Some places, like some urban areas, now have parking maximums. It's fairly new. It's like probably the last 20 years that people have talked about it and done it, but generally everywhere has parking minimums.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ron, go ahead.
What is the definition of an acceptable parking space in terms of dimensions and material, or like dirt or cement?
Yeah, right. We have a parking section of our land use bylaw that has a standard size, and then you can have a certain subset that can be smaller sized. We don't require paved unless, we don't require paving of the spaces, but there are standards for the size. So it's 5.5 meters by 2.5 meters in width. But then the parking for persons with disabilities are larger, and then up to 35% can be compact car only, which is 5 meters by 2.4 meters.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good question. Anybody else have any questions, comments? I know I had one. I was just gonna clarify. I think I know the answer. So this is for any part of the island. So if for some reason one of these projects came up like out by the golf course or up in Hood Point where there's no bus service or whatever, this would also still apply.
This would also still apply.
Okay.
Yeah, this would just be blanket.
Yeah. So, I mean, generally I'm in favor of it. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's expensive to build parking and depending on where it is and how much land you've got. So I think allowing this, and I appreciate the question, Nigel, because lowering the minimum just makes it a little bit easier, right? To kind of meet that and especially so, for example, on that birch site on Miller Road, it was really tight and we could only fit so much parking. So I think it's great if there's more land and they can provide more parking and it's suitable, all the better. So yeah, generally I'm in favor of it. And yeah, it's just, it will get tricky if for some reason down the road, it's somewhere where there isn't transit. You know, it's very easy now when you're close to the cove or on the bus line, but if it does move forward at some point that there is this type of housing further out, yeah, that would be the only complication I would see. But you know, the hope being maybe they have more land out there, so it's not as tight as in the cove that you have the space to provide more parking.
That's kind of the assumption. Like I remember once having a conversation with somebody who is proposing sort of early stage, but affordable housing somewhere that, wasn't on the bus route, wasn't close to anything. And sort of they jumped straight to like, how can the municipality support by giving variances for parking? And I was sort of asking them, was like, well, how much parking, like what do you need to function as a building for the people living there who aren't on a bus route? And like, you know, I have to try to encourage people to start with that. Like there's one thing that says this is what our land use bylaw requires as a minimum, but there's like, what does your building and the uses in the building require? And sometimes people get fixated on like, this is the zoning needs, so this is how many I need. And it's like, well, I don't know your exact needs. Like it's sort of the land use bylaw is like it's just a blanket stick, and often it's the minimum. And it's like, well, you may need more. You're free to put in more if that's what you think you need. Don't just, Anyway, so yeah, it's a good point. Like if you're not on a bus route and you're somewhere else, it's like, well, this is the minimum, but you may want to have more for your building function.
Yeah, I'm just going back to look. Yeah, exactly. And that would be sort of my only feedback would be, and I don't know if it's in how the bylaw might be worded, but that's a minimum that has to be met. But, and again, if it's a rezoning, maybe there's discretion in the planning department or whatever that they can request more, but that would be my feedback is, if it is somewhere more remote, if it isn't served by transit, I would be troubled if it was only half a space per unit, because, the reality is a lot of our island, I shouldn't say a lot, there are portions of our island that you can really only get around by car, or if you happen to have an e-bike, which is, a little difficult year round getting groceries and stuff. So yeah, I think there are still some challenges in our community in terms of those transportation related items. But yeah, overall, I'd be in favor. I think it's a great move to support the development of affordable housing. I also wanted to comment, I like the definition that you're proposing in the bylaw for affordable housing. I think it's nice and succinct and leaves that room. Like you say, it's just sort of identifying no specifics, just that it's non-market and it will be under a housing covenant. I think that works really well. Yeah, any other final comments from anybody? Nope. Okay. Now, what do you need from us, Dan? Are you looking? Oh, we do have a recommendation. Okay, so Sarah can bring that one up. So that the Housing Advisory Committee provide the following comments regarding the parking standards for affordable housing, multifamily development. Oh, that was one other thing I was just going to clarify, Daniel. This is multifamily, right? And so there wouldn't be, say, secondary suites, like, because I was wondering how that might layer on. Yeah.
I mean, so this is like the action item in the Housing Accelerator Fund is multifamily. The bylaw would apply to all. Okay. I guess the difference being that in our parking bylaw, it rounds up. So if you had one unit that was a secondary suite and you entered into a housing agreement, you would need 0.5, and we would say, oh, that's great, we round up, so you require 1. So you wouldn't actually gain anything from it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just, it's crossing my mind. There's newer developments, sometimes more, in cities, but say creating some row houses or duplex or something, and then they have suites below them. and then maybe a detached secondary dwelling, depending on kind of how it's all
Yeah.
done. And yeah, just sort of, I guess that's just something, again, to think about, other than the geographic location and transit, the specific proposal maybe that's coming. And like you say, it only applies to the affordable aspect of it. So if it's a multi-unit thing and there's only part, but yeah, I guess the need for a parking space for a suite would be on top of this. Is that right? That it, depending on if the suite was affordable or not.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so Daniel, so is this you're just looking for this recommendation with some comments? That's what you need? And
I think, you know, if the committee supports, then you just say like you support the.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you've
proposed
heard
bylaw or
comments,
something.
if that's
Yeah.
enough for you, yeah, we can just sort
Yeah.
of say the Housing Advisory Committee supports this, what is it, a bylaw?
But you can just
Bylaw.
change the wording right at the top, that the Housing Advisory Committee supports the
Supports,
parking standards for affordable housing.
perfect. Sounds good. Oh, I think, yeah, just take out everything after staff report, just take out staff report and everything out.
I'm not reading staff reports.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so it includes staff report and take that out, I guess. So yes,
Yeah.
that Housing Advisory Committee supports the parking standards for affordable housing, multi-unit family development as presented in the staff report. That. Okay. And yeah, just take out
The
after the word
beginning staff
developments.
report words.
Yeah, after the word developments, there's staff report. So just take that
Okay.
staff report out. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Does that work, Daniel? Anything
Yep,
else?
that's great.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we have a mover. Anybody? Okay, I will move it. Okay, thank you, Ron. I'll second it. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Okay, excellent. That's passed. I believe unanimously. I don't think I saw any nays. Perfect. Okay, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda, 5.1. Let's get my agenda up here. Oops. 5.1 is subcommittee report. So the Community on Housing Organization Subcommittee. So I guess this was in here as an update. So there is an excerpt in the agenda. This went to Committee of the Whole last week and then was approved by council at this week's meeting. So I guess maybe I'll just update, because in case the rest of the committee hasn't seen that, I'll maybe read that excerpt out. Where is that? I think it's right at the bottom. So essentially, the recommendations that we made were mostly approved, not every item, but it was council referred it to staff to further review the financial and resource allocations and get back to council for the strategic planning session. That was one. And then the next one was approval of part of our recommendation, which was in principle entering into a partner agreement with Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing with the help of legal counsel, and approving the expenditures up to $5,000 for that. So essentially, and I think Councillor Wake, this was your sort of, you put this forward, was essentially so that some of that work can kind of get going in parallel with the staff review to get working on that. So I think, is there anything we need to discuss here as a committee? I know we've kind of had some emails and, thinking about next steps. Daniel, I guess it would make sense for us to, have a quick meeting to figure out next steps between staff and Birch and figuring out who needs to do what. And is there any questions from the committee or any other thoughts? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's is that all we had to sort of talk about? I know, Daniel, is there anything else other than that we should, probably have a quick meeting and figure out next steps? I don't know if that needs to be discussed in an open meeting or not. I feel like it isn't. Although I'm happy to, but I also don't want to take up everybody's time.
I think just that, council ratified it on Monday. So now I have it on my plan. So the two pieces, it's like further review to bring back to council, and then to start work with legal counsel to work at sort of drafting the partnering agreement.
Yeah. And do we know when council strategic planning session, is that in the new year I mean, I don't know if you don't have to necessarily say specific dates, but what month it is? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't know
Okay.
council.
Oh, Councillor Morris is saying maybe it's not scheduled. It's not, they
Not
don't know.
scheduled yet. Okay.
Yeah. I was just worried maybe it was like early December and we had like 4
Right.
weeks to kind of jump on things. So, okay. So we don't know, we can breathe a little bit. And yeah, just start taking those first steps. Yeah, that was great. Thank you everybody on the committee and on the subcommittee. Tim and Ron and Nigel, I know you're also doing some work on that sort of financial piece, cash in lieu and stuff that might be useful in this next step as well. So yeah, thank you everybody. It's very exciting. And yeah, we'll sort of see how it goes in these next few steps. Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
I think it's worth mentioning that we are planning to have staff report quarterly on progress on the strategic plan. And so it would be good. And so the next one, I presume, will be in December. And it would be good if we had something to report in terms of progress on this.
Okay. Yeah, it would be nice to sort of map out some steps and see what we can get done, before mid-December when basically everything just stops. Everybody kind of goes on break, right? That second half of December. Great. Okay. So if there's nothing else, that's sort of the quick update of what's going on there. The 5.2 Housing Reserve Working Group. So Nigel, I don't know if anything to add there. I know you are sort of working on some of the stuff.
Yeah, all I have to add is that we are working on it. There's sort of a draft in progress, but we really want to take the opportunity to get input from staff before presenting it to the Housing Advisory Committee, but it's in process, which is also the response for the next agenda item.
Okay.
I have a draft going, but we can, you say it and then I'll say what I have.
That's okay. Yeah, you can loop them together. 5.3 is the Housing Policy Review Subcommittee, so work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So again, we want to take the opportunity to get staff input, but it's in progress.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay.
Can somebody remind me who are the members of each subcommittee is? Because Nigel referred to we.
Oh, I think, sorry, the first one, the Housing Reserve Fund, I think I offered to do that, and I don't remember if anyone else jumped on it, but I've been working on it. And then Tim and I are working on the Housing Policy Review. Is there anyone else on that?
It's listed in the agenda, just as you've said. So Nigel for the first one, Nigel and Tim for the second one. So yeah, I don't know if there's anybody else on the committee who had wanted to jump in. Feel free to get in touch with Nigel. And but yeah, it's
sorry.
listed.
I just want to the reserve fund. Lois is part of that conversation as well. So Lois, if you want to jump into the conversation, reach out to me after the meeting.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, and I think that one's like, yeah, you're exploring, like we just talked about in this last rezoning thing, cash in lieu, like other ways that might be able to fund that housing reserve. So yeah, it's very relevant work at the moment. Mm-hmm. Okay, any questions or comments on those two committees? Work in progress. Okay. 6.1 updates. So lot 3 of the community lands, 1033 Miller. I don't have much of an update on this one. It's essentially work in progress. We're moving along. I think they've finalized, there was changes being made to the basic schematic design just to meet some new building code changes, to meet some requirements for the, accessibility and all of those kinds of things. So those have been completed. And so now all of the consultants are on board and they'll be moving into design development. But as far as I know, the overall timeline is still intact and aiming for permits, sometime in the new year, and they're submitting for permits sometime in the new year, and construction, yeah, like September or autumn next year starting. So as far as I know, we're still on track for that. Lot 1, sorry, it's item 6.2, lot 1 of the community lands. We haven't done a ton in the last month because there was some, vacations and other stuff going on. So it's a work in progress. Oh, actually, I did want to mention something. I should check my notes to make sure I don't miss anything here. That Daniel, I was going to just check in. I thought this might be a good forum. Part of the work plan for that item was to have, I think we described it as like a council workshop or something like that, kind of at the 90% mark. So I just wanted to check in with you, and you might not know the answer. It might be that we have to kind of, get a little email thread going, but what would be the best, what would be the best venue for that to happen? Would it be a committee of the whole? Would it be a delegation to council, even though that doesn't quite allow as much dialogue? Or as a fallback, because I know council's agenda gets pretty, full this time of year, would it be maybe a presentation to the Housing Advisory Committee, and we could actively invite other councillors if they wanted to attend and talk? So I just sort of wanted a little bit of feedback if you'd had any thought on the best way for us to kind of do that. Essentially, it's like a 90% check-in. We're almost done. We just want to make sure we've kind of,
I think like my memory from the presentations before council was council, definitely wanted to be involved. I know that we schedule committee of the wholes. I don't know if they're monthly in the in-between weeks between council. And so I think
Third
one of
Monday of
those
the month.
third Monday of the month. I know that like the November one's booked, but if we had a target date, it might be the January one to aim for, and then I can bring that up to the CAO about scheduling that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you do that, or do you want me to email you to kind of kick that off?
Sure. If you want to email me, and
Okay. So
that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. And so January. Okay, great. Excellent. And then we have 6.3 is staff update. Is there anything? I think that's kind of a standing agenda item. Was there anything, Daniel, from your side as an update?
No, I think I'm excited to have made some progress on the Housing Accelerator Fund pieces. So the parking standards, and then with the direction, the support and principle for the partnering agreement, I'll be contacting CMHC to adjust that action plan item. So I'm glad that's progressing.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you. Yeah, for all the hard work on that. Are there more objectives that we're still aiming for? Like, are there more items on the list?
The ones that haven't been addressed, haven't been like started or brought to council, sewer DCC bylaw, which had been our former CAO's task and is now our new CAO's task, who's come up to speed with it. We've had some initial meetings, so hoping to bring that forward. And then the last one that in our action plan didn't start right away, so I'm not as urgent pressed on, was essentially grants for nonprofit to support direct development. So that's a bigger piece to work on.
Okay. And sorry, say that again, to support, what would the grants for?
Like development of nonprofit housing. Except it's like we would be providing money.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Any questions or comments for anybody, or questions for staff, or all of that good news? Okay. The only other, I think that's the end of the agenda. We have question period, and I don't think anyone's here. The only other thing I was going to just maybe add is I did have, I spoke with a community group earlier this week, and they were asking about membership on this committee. So I guess, Sarah, I'm not sure if you know, are we still looking for members for this committee, or would we be open to applications for this committee?
I'm actually not sure. I can check on that though.
Okay.
So we have 5 members, and the terms of reference say up to 6.
Okay. So
there is another spot.
Okay. Yeah. So if folks are watching this, if anybody is thinking about joining this committee and wants to help out, please feel free to send an application. And I think the group was particularly concerned sort of about seniors housing and that lens of bringing that lens to the discussion. So I encourage them to apply. So okay, that was kind of all that was on my radar. I'll maybe just quickly open it. Anybody else? Thoughts, comments, news to report? No? Okay, thank you, everybody. Our next meeting is already, I think, scheduled. Is it in the agenda? I always forget if it's in the agenda.
It says to be determined in the agenda.
Okay, so let's see. We have been doing Friday mornings. I think we were on a bit of a schedule of I've got Friday, the 29th of November in my calendar. I don't know if
That's what I have as tentative as well.
correct. So unless I hear objections, I guess we'll stick with that one. So Friday, November 29th.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay. So we'll have that in the calendar, and certainly be in touch if there's a conflict, but we will see you then, and hopefully with some updates on all of these exciting items. Yeah, okay. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Rest of your day. Bye-bye.